Hello, Intern Nation. I watched Season 17 of The Bachelorette so that you don't have to, and I'm here to provide you with my takeaways from the show. Regardless of whether or not you've seen The Bachelor or The Bachelorette before, I'm sure you're aware that they're filled from start to finish with crazy moments.
Normally you shouldn't go in vans with strangers, but tonight's just a little different.
Let's hope.
Incredible dates.
And a one, and a two, and a rip-a-doody-doo.
And of course, drama.
Yo, listen, I'm not putting anybody on blast, especially when I don't have all the facts.
You already done
I didn't
that.
put anyone on
Oh,
blast.
But as enticing as people making out in catsuits and drag queens trying to get people to roast each other is, it is not actually the takeaway I had from the show. Because of this, and actually wanting to complete this video and knowing my limited attention span, I'm going to skip over most of the contestants and focus only on the people who truly matter. Our contestant Katie is, from what I can tell, a very nice, funny, and energetic person who seems like she would be very fun to be around. I have no problems with her, and any of the contestants would be lucky to be with her in the end. From the very beginning, there were 3, soon to be 4 contestants that stood out to me, and it was clear the eventual winner would come from that pack. I want to take us through each of these 4 candidates' journeys one at a time, instead of all at once, for a very specific reason. It's very easy to watch The Bachelorette and wonder why all 4 of them are so confident, but they aren't watching the good moments in each other's relationships with Katie. They see the group dates and see each other in the house, but miss each other's other personal moments. They miss the one-on-ones and, of course, the all-important makeout sessions. They miss the moments that truly establish connections between Katie and their opponents. By examining these characters one at a time, we can get a clearer image of the strengths each of them saw in their relationship with Katie, and then better understand their heartbreak. I want to start with Andrew. Andrew started strong, showcasing his humor, openness, and all-around delightful personality. You would struggle to find someone on this show that would be more pleasant and fun to be around than Andrew. He grew on me more and more with every second that he was on screen. Andrew and Katie had a one-on-one date, and it went wonderfully. Everything was good, and they were able to have some wonderful discussions.
You want to read this one?
Andrew asked her questions about being in a biracial relationship, and they had some great discussions on what that meant and the challenges that would come along with it. She said all of the right things, and it was an important step to see, especially after the Rachel Kirkconnell drama that came out after she was chosen as the winner of The Bachelor season. Everything was looking peachy keen for Andrew after that. Their time together always went perfectly, and though he has no way of knowing this for sure, Andrew would say, "There's no way anyone else kisses like us."
Her personality is so infectious, her smile, her touch.
There were 5 guys left. 4 would advance to the all-important family visit. Greg and Mike already had roses, meaning one of Justin, Andrew, or Blake were going home. In my mind, Andrew was guaranteed a rose, meaning Blake or Justin are going home. She gives a rose to Blake. As a huge Blake fan, I'm relieved that Justin will be leaving instead of my boy. But then, in a shocking move, she hands the rose to Justin, sending Andrew home. I couldn't believe it, and neither could Andrew. She spoke with him and told him that she had just built stronger connections than him. Speechless, he was walked into the car, to leave thinking about how everything had gone perfectly, but that he still wasn't enough. A truly heartbreaking moment for all of Bachelor Nation to experience. We cut to Katie the next day. She said she's terrified because for the first time she wasn't confident she had made the right choice. She hears knocking at the door, and she opens it, and there is Andrew's beautiful, smiling face. He says it wouldn't be right for him to leave without both of them smiling, to represent their relationship better. They talk for a bit, then he gets up to leave. But before he does, he hands her a note to read when he's gone. She opens it, and it says, "If you change your mind, I'll be waiting. Love, Andrew." She can't take it. She races after him and leaps into his arms. She asks him if he would be willing to stay. He tells her that as much as he would love to end with her, he's too hurt in this place and needs a wife who chooses him. They make out one more time before loading him into the car to leave once and for all, because, of course, no one kisses like they do. I'll admit, I had to hold in a tear during that one. That moment is what The Bachelorette is all about, watching these bonds be made and broken from start to finish, the pain they both felt. I started to question whether watching this was worth all of it. Was I just watching human suffering for sport? Was this just the Hunger Games, but instead of destroying people's metaphorical hearts instead of their physical hearts? Was I making a joke of other people's pain? The conclusion I came to was a difficult yes, but that couldn't stop my compulsive need to finish this journey, to see what it was all for. I pray the next Bachelor is Andrew, and not that snake Greg, though betting against reality Steve feels Next, I want to talk about Dad Mike. Michael is fueled by a sad story. His wife died of cancer, leaving him as a single father. Katie liked him a ton from their first one-on-one. She saw in him someone who'd already proven himself capable of being a husband and a father, and loved the idea of having an instant family. I personally thought he was a little weird sometimes, but she seemed to be into it, so all was well. He got the group date rose at the final 5, meaning he was guaranteed to go to hometowns. That is until a call with his son. His son asked him why he didn't want to see him anymore, and this crushed him. He couldn't go on and wasn't willing to harm his relationship with his son to be a contestant on The Bachelorette, ultimately a wise move. So he went to Katie's room and told her he needed to leave. Katie was understanding, but also destroyed. Fresh off the pain of letting Andrew go, Michael, a man who she could see going all the way, wasn't willing to stay for her anymore and leaves her. This caused a massive amount of pain for her. It is truly when things began to unravel. I enjoyed writing Michael's entry because everything was pretty simple. That will not be the case with our next person, Greg. Greg was the standout from night 1. As soon as I saw the product of Jake Gyllenhaal being bred with a recently abandoned Yellow Lab puppy, I picked him as my winner. Greg's shyness won Katie over instantly. She gave him the first impression rose to give confidence to the shy, nervous puppy dog, and the rest was history. Greg got the first one-on-one date and was the front runner for the entire rest of the way. She and Greg bonded on their first one-on-one over the shared experience of both struggling after the loss of their fathers. This emotional connection, on top of their clear infatuation with each other, put them over the top, and instantly it appeared that something would have to go very wrong for someone to overtake him. Upon the arrival of Blake and the rise of Michael, Andrew, and others, there clearly was some stiff competition, but Greg was able to maintain his lead all the way up until his downfall. The roots of Greg's eventual downfall were clear throughout the entire show. In one-on-one situations, Greg always did great, but he was downright awful in group situations. He was horrible when other people were out on dates and very jealous, and faded into the background during the group dates he was on. She gave him constant validation during the group dates, making sure he knew how much she cared about him. The constant validation, along with the first impression rose, the first one-on-one, and eventually being the only person to be given 2 one-on-ones, ultimately wasn't enough to satisfy him. Greg received a second one-on-one date, and a controversial decision when other people remaining hadn't received a single one. Katie made this choice to give Greg renewed confidence due to his one-on-one having taken place so long ago. The date went very well and resulted in Greg being the first person to tell Katie he loved her. She didn't say it back because she had decided she would only say that to her final person. It was the one thing she wanted to save for the eventual winner of the show. Greg accepted that fact and accepted his rose, advancing him to the family visit. At the time, it appeared their date and Greg's words vaulted him even further ahead than the others. We had no way of knowing that wonderful date had started the demise of Greg and Katie's beautiful journey. I understand Greg's pain better than most, having gone through something similar in the past, but he refused to understand that everyone is operating on their own timelines, and the importance of giving the other person the proper time they need for emotions to develop and for them to be ready to vocalize those emotions to you. In my mind, this and all the problems that are to come are all on Greg, and not because of Katie's response, which, in my opinion, was perfectly sufficient. The next morning, Greg decided he was going to go to Katie's room and speak with her, which is a move that I think needed to happen to clear the air. I, along with the rest of Bachelor Nation, watched hoping for him to have calmed down and everyone could apologize and move forward. But it became clear that Greg had not returned to move forward, but to get the I love you he didn't get the night before. Greg wanted Katie to quit the show and leave with him, but refused to verbalize that ultimatum. Instead, he stormed out when Katie refused to give it to him. She chased after him, running through the same hollowed halls she had chased Andrew down in just days before. She begged Greg to stay, but he refused to relinquish his ultimatum, and ultimately departed for good. She stormed up to her room and wept on the bathroom floor, demanding she have a flight booked home, because without Greg, there was no point in continuing the show. It was difficult to watch. watching her beg and apologize, not understanding what she had done so wrong. They circled and circled for 45 minutes as I felt worse and worse watching her pain. I was once again confronted by the same questions that haunted me at Andrew's elimination. But I was too far in. I needed to wait for that final episode to see if she continued or if the loss was too much for her to bear. During the After the Final Rose show, Katie and Greg spoke for the first time. She accused him of being an actor who graduated acting school and was only on the show to gain fame and to gaslight her, and that he was not in fact a shy puppy, but actually a cocky frat boy, and that this entire time on the show, his life was a lie. This makes me very nervous concerning his potential as the next Bachelor, but also shows a major flaw that the franchise is seeing now. The countless people trying to get on the show, either to be the future lead or gain publicity and social media followers. There were 4 people on this individual season, not even including Greg, who were sent home because of accusations they were here for the wrong reasons. And that often shook Katie's confidence, and if she could trust any of the men she was falling in love with. Her confidence in Greg's authenticity was ironically the only thing that motivated her to stay during the great Thomas drama of episode 3. Lastly, after all the pain and heartbreak we've experienced here together, it's time for us to look at our eventual winner. Blake did not start at the same time as everyone else. He was originally on Claire and Tayshia's seasons, but when he heard Katie was the Bachelorette, he wanted to get on. He asked Katie if he could join the show late, and she said he could. The other guys were furious she would let Blake join after she had already developed connections with many of them. To add fuel to the fire, she gave Blake the first one-on-one after he arrived, and then it went perfectly. Blake talked about his experiences working with endangered species in Africa, and I was reminded that there's nothing hotter than a man saving animals. They made out in some hay bales, and their relationship was off to the races. Blake jumped instantly up to the second favorite behind Greg, and their relationship was off. Blake stole extra time going to her room to comfort her after sending someone home. He did a great job in the group dates. He was doing everything right, and she was falling for him from the very first day he arrived. Things were a little shaky going into the family visits. He was a little behind by nature of not being there as long as the other guys, and wasn't ready to tell her he was falling in love with her yet, even though the other guys already were. But she brought him to the family visits anyway. Between Blake's family visit and his fantasy suite date, all of the Greg drama occurred, but luckily Katie had recovered from that loss and decided to stay and have her date with Blake. Their day went great, and despite hearing that she almost left when Greg left, Blake finally built up the confidence he had been storing and told Katie that he loved her in a long speech about his journey to reach those feelings. To the shock of Bachelor Nation, Katie said it back and declared that her heart belonged to Blake and that he was her person, a complete 180 from where we were left during the last episode. They had their fantasy suite, and Blake was clearly the winner of the show. The only problem being, Justin was still there preparing for his date later that day. Justin arrived with high hopes, only to have Katie tell him that she was sending him home because she loved Blake. Blake was successfully the last man standing, but he wasn't out of the woods yet. There were still 2 things standing in Blake's way: meeting Katie's family and deciding whether or not to propose. Blake went to meet Katie's mom and her aunt, and things went terribly. They told Blake that they frankly didn't want him and were very concerned about Katie's independence if they got married. Her aunt barraged Blake with questions there were no correct answers to and shattered his confidence. Earlier that day, he knew he wanted to propose, but after that, he was no longer sure, and his confidence from the night before was all but gone. He struggled picking out a ring and clearly didn't know what he should do, and knew that Katie would be devastated if he didn't get down on one knee. Katie arrived at the proposal location, which was filled with dead trees, which didn't seem like a good omen to me at all. Then Blake arrived. They stood facing each other in silence for a long time. Blake started to talk after a long while, and his lines were filled with nerves and with pausing. Things were looking bad, leaving Bachelor Nation holding their collective breath. But then he got down on one knee and proposed. She happily said yes, and they departed on horseback. The happy couple is still together today. Through the highs and lows, Katie and Blake stayed strong and overcame the odds to reach a happy engagement. They seem happy, and I'm very happy for them, and very proud of Blake for representing the Blake community so well. But this happy ending once again left me facing the same questions as before. Did the happy ending make it all worth watching? No, probably not. Do I still question the morality of watching these people's pain and emotional suffering just for entertainment and drama? Yeah, I still do. But ultimately, will I be back for Michelle's season? Well, who's to say?